Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shirley Evans from TechDIS, and I'm Project Manager for the Discover JISC project funded through JISC Advanced. One of the main objectives of the project is about helping further education and skills providers find and use JISC resources and other free and open source resources to deliver inclusive learning and teaching. So picking up on the free and open source side, this webinar is an introduction to Google Apps for Education. Over the last couple of years, I've seen a huge increase in the use of Google products in education, and have attended a number of events where Google Apps for Education have been featured, and so I thought this was an important and useful area to include in the Discover JISC project. So it is my great pleasure to introduce today Ross Mann, who is Global Awareness Manager at Google, and he's going to give an introduction to Google Apps for Education. Before I hand over to Ross, please note you can post questions in the comments below the video, and we'll try and pick these up as we go along. Or if you want to email me, shirley@techdis.ac.uk, and we'll get back to you afterwards. So it's over to you now, Ross. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Shirley, very much. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick run through of Google and Education. I wanted to give you some background with regards to what we do in education, why we're in education, and then go through in some more detail with regards to the sort of services that we offer. So as Shirley said, I'm the Global Awareness Manager for Google and Education. I basically trying to spread the word of what Google is doing, and to summarize, in a sense, we're talking about technology enabling education. Great. Perfect, okay. So one of the questions we get asked a lot by various different groups of people when we meet them is, how do we prepare our students for a world that we can't see? How do we prepare them for the future? And one of the big challenges is we don't obviously know what that's going to look like. If you think about the advancements in technology in the last 10 years alone, back in 2003, there wasn't a Twitter, there wasn't a lot of the social networks weren't even launched yet, and people communicated and collaborated and worked in very, very different ways, and that's just a decade. So things are really, really speeding up. So that was one of the things I wanted to kind of start with. The other question I suppose we get is, what will graduates' work look like in 2036? So this isn't an arbitrary number. This is if people, if students actually went to school today, they graduate in 2036, and what would that work life look like for them? One of the things we do know is that the web is everywhere, and the web is ubiquitous. It really is transforming the way that we work, the way that we communicate, collaborate, just everything from travel to our education. And for that reason, obviously, we're firm believers in the use of the web. We, in Google and Education, we want to use the web to help people discover, connect, and enjoy learning. We do that in three main ways. We want to build a foundation of technology, which helps empower educational communities to make learning magical for students. So what does that mean? Where do we go in the future? What do we see the future as? We're not in a position where we can see a huge distance into the future. But one of the things we do know is that there's a real need for some of the skills that we've kind of forgotten to a certain extent in various different parts. We know that the browser, from our perspective, certainly is the future, and HTML5 is the future. But these skills, and the basic skills that I mentioned earlier, so around agility, communicating, collaborating, critical thinking, analyzing information, and problem solving, and probably the one that is probably really, really important is curiosity as well. So I'm going to focus in on a couple of those just very quickly, just to kind of give a bit of background, and this will help for context in a little bit. So going to speak about collaboration, analyzing information, communication, and critical thinking. So how we communicate has fundamentally changed. We're not in a situation anymore where we're having, even in education, where we're having the teacher standing at the top of the classroom and basically lecturing students. It's become much more interactive. When I show this particular picture to students, depending on their age group, some of them know what it is, others think that it's some kind of brand new device that they've never seen before, a dinosaur. It really depends on the age group. But the way that we actually communicate with students has fundamentally changed. The way we communicate generally has also fundamentally changed. This is a picture from 1957 when phone boxes were launched in the UK, and people actually queued for a long time to use these phone boxes. In the space of less than 50 years, we now have a device which is more powerful than the early stage computers, or even computers of 10, 15 years ago, that you can actually wear, and that is the speed at which we're talking about that change. For those of you who didn't know, that was one of our founders, Sergey Brin, with Google Glass, which is quite an interesting concept. Collaboration itself has also changed, and it's a huge buzzword in schools and universities and further education colleges across the UK. And what is collaboration? What's good collaboration? How do we get students to collaborate more? And our answer a lot of times is much like this picture. People are going to be just talking. They're going to be taking notes. They're going to be using multiple different devices. But at the core of everything that they're doing most times is going to be some kind of web-based collaboration platform. And for us, that platform is Google Apps for Education. So this brings us to our first point, which is we build a foundation of technology and access. So the platform is Google Apps for Education, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail now in a second, what that includes. The devices for us, we focus a lot on Chrome, which is our browser, and Chromebooks, which is a device that's running Chrome as an operating system. And then we have web stores, for example, a Chrome web store, which adds apps and content. And of course, there's a huge amount of content on YouTube. So what's included in Google Apps for Education? We have a mailbox for a 25 gig mailbox, which allows you to store obviously more than most people would need from a mailbox perspective. We have calendar, which is a very intuitive calendar. Actually, it allows you to share various different documents in the calendar as well. Because it's all web-based, these all work together and they're interoperable, which is quite important. So there's no downloaded software that's needed, there's no licensing. All of these apps are completely free for schools, universities, further education colleges. So after a calendar, there's then Google Drive, which is your document storage, your repository for information. So you get 5 gigs of free storage there for things like PDFs and CAD files, for example. And then if you use the Google Documents editors, so that's Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Presentations, which is what we're using right now, and Google Drawings, there is an unlimited amount of those. You can use those without any license or any kind of limitations with regards to device. Once it's a browser-enabled device, you can get access to your documents, edit them, and you can also edit them offline. Then there's Google Groups, which is in a sense the glue that holds this together, and that allows you to work together. So say, for example, in this particular instance, you had a project that you were working with 3 or 4 people across the UK. Instead of constantly emailing them, you could set up a Google group so that the conversations you're having with them, either on email or documents, would actually be archived, and you can communicate with them with one email address, which makes it very easy. You can also share websites at one email address and share documents with one email address. Then there's Google Talk, which is an instant messenger, but also includes what we're actually using right now, which is Google Hangouts. So that's basically video conferencing, screen sharing, simultaneous document editing in this piece of web software for free again, and for up to 15 people. And then there's Google Sites, which the way I explain that is it's a website builder with the basic concept being that if you can send an email, you can basically set up a site. So in under 30 seconds, you can set up a very basic site and then add content as if it was an email. So very, very straightforward and easy to use. So they're the core set of Google apps. Again, as I said, they are free for universities, for their education colleges. They're free for schools. There is a massive difference between this and the consumer Gmail that you're using. With Google Apps for Education, it's much closer to the Google Apps for Business offering, which we have, which is the same thing, but we actually charge businesses £33 per user per year for. So there's no advertising on this, on any of these apps here. And you have all of the controls that you would expect. So that's things like a walled garden for a school, the auditing functionality you'd expect, and the ability to deploy different apps for different age groups or classes, depending on the need and the teacher's need. Additional to those services, there are an additional 68 at last count. So that's everything from Google Plus to Google Maps, to things like Moderator, which is a really useful tool. I would definitely suggest having a look at that, to Blogger, Picasa, etc. So there's a raft of these tools that are available, and schools have the ability to provision to different user groups, as we call them, or different classes, depending on the need for that particular class. So this gives you an idea. This is what this is the way that we would expect, and we have seen a lot of teachers in particular and educators working together on a project at the same time. You have basically a Hangout where down the bottom you can see the 4 people in various different parts of the world collaborating on a document and editing it at the same time. So unlike traditional word processors where you, number one, have to buy a license, number two, you then have to go through and actually use it in a kind of a siloed way, if you like, where you share it and you have version 1.1.2, etc. That just goes out the window. You just have a document that you can share with people. You can also share access with a colleague and then take back that access as quickly or as easily as just removing them from that document. So to give you an idea, I thought I might show you how a pretty famous song might have been written if they had used Google Docs.
Oh, here she comes. She's a scary lady. She's an angry tiger. She's a man gobbler, eater. She's a man eater. Here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes.
So that gives you a kind of a fun way of thinking about the collaboration. But as you saw there, you've got up to 50 people collaborating on the same document at the same time. One of the questions we get instantly once we say that is, well, that's great, but what happens if students are deleting each other's work? The owner of the document has ultimate control over it, so they can revert back to any version of the document. So that is quite an important point. So you still remain in control of that document, even if you share it out to 10, 15, 20 people. So with this web technologies, you can probably understand there's a large number of people using it. So we've got over 20 million active users using Google Apps for Education. We've got universities across the board. We also have local authorities like Norfolk County Council. We've got the city of Gothenburg in Sweden, for example. And we've got a couple of other local authorities which will be going live pretty soon. We'll be able to talk about then. This technology scales very, very quickly and very easily. An example of that is we actually launched this for the entire country of Malaysia about a week ago. And that was, I believe, 10 or 11 million students that now have access to these tools. and it was literally a case of switching it on. They have Chromebooks as devices, but they could use any browser-enabled devices, I've said, and they then get access to all of these tools. There's also universities that give you the kind of the confidence, if you like, because a lot of the questions, which I'll cover in a second, are around privacy and security. But we have universities like Bristol, Sheffield, York, St Andrews, Westminster that are using this, and these are large research universities, and they've been using it for quite some time now. So for any school, if you're interested, if they want to sign up, they just go to google.com/a/edu, or do a Google search for Google Apps for Education, and they then click Get Apps Today, and they can sign up there. And once approved, they would then get access to the management console, and they can then provision accounts for their school. So referring very briefly to privacy, which is a very important point. There's been a lot of talk about cloud security and privacy over the last couple of years, but it's very, very important to understand some key points. Number one is that the content that you put into this system, Google Apps for Education, is your content. It is the school's content, it is the university's content, and it is the further education institution's content or the business's content, and it is not ours. Your app's content belongs to you and not to us. We don't look at your content, and Google employees do not get access to your content, and the only time that will happen is if an administrator seeks support, where a very, very small group of support people actually based here in Dublin you will then grant them limited access to some of the information, like headers and emails, so that they can actually troubleshoot your for your particular support issue. We don't share your content, as I said already. There's no advertising on the core services, which were the first 6 boxes that I showed you. So Gmail, Calendar, Google Documents, Groups, Talk. There's no advertising on those, so we do not share that content. And if you want more information or more detail on this, I'll send on the details for our detailed privacy policy below here. We also have comply with the European Directive on data protection, of course. We have included, obviously, we're safe harbor compliant. We also have some other ISO 2701, SSA 16, and these are basically audited. People who come in and audit our data centers, our processes, to make sure that we are compliant. And we also recently added in the ability for education customers and business customers to accept what are called European model contract clauses. So in a sense, these are this is language taken directly from the European directive, and that's for on data protection, that we will basically adhere to completely, so we don't make any changes or edits. So that's made a huge difference as well. With regards to some of the educational content, we have we have an entire section in the Chrome Web Store. We have specific apps. There's a growing number of these, but there's also apps packs, which you can basically use these groups of apps for, depending on the age group or the year group, or also the subject title as well. So I'd suggest having a look in the Chrome Web Store under the education section. There you'll see quite a wide variety of those. And one of the questions we get after these presentations is, that's great, but what does this actually make any difference? Well, here's an example of a partner of ours called Hapara, who did some research when they deployed one of their services, the teacher dashboard service in an area in New Zealand. So what they wanted to do was find out over a period of time, was there any shift in the actual assessment level, so the points that students were actually getting over a period of time. What they found was there was an expected shift because of the access to technology of somewhere in the region of on the actual year group, so the years 4 through 8 there down at the bottom. But what they ended up actually getting was a 6x increase in certain cases. So year 4 in particular, they had a 6x increase and that can be explained in various different ways. Obviously, the age group is vital, but an absolutely massive shift in the level of points achieved. So these tools, access to the web in a structured and safe way, definitely does have an impact on learning. The last point that I wanted to focus on from that list initially was analysing information. And this is one of the ones that comes up time and time again when you think about if you're trying to get students or people to kind of think or work in the way that that I did when I was in school, when I was asked to write a project on, say, Christopher Columbus. It would have taken me, quite a long time to go into the library, find the Encyclopedia Britannica or Encarta, and then go through that and take out the information and rewrite the piece 5 or 6 times. Now you can do that in a matter of seconds with finding various different resources online and taking that content and making sense of it. So what's become even more important now is how students and people analyze that information and really make sense of it rather than just finding the information. And teaching and learning is evolving at a very quick pace to try and keep pace with this. We launched Google Glass, which I mentioned earlier, in the US a couple of weeks ago. And what you'll start to see is more and more of these sorts of wearable devices in the coming years. To give you an idea of what this does is, in a sense, is kind of like your personal assistant all the time. So you wear these devices. Through the little piece of crystal there, you can actually see this heads-up display, which is the equivalent of a 25-inch high-definition screen at about 6 feet away. So there, but not necessarily your entire field of vision being obstructed, of course. And you basically talk to it. You say, "Okay, Glass, how long is the Brooklyn Bridge?" And then very quickly it pops up with a nice card saying that it's 1,825 meters in total length. So the access to this information is becoming instant. You can obviously do this now on your mobile phone very quickly with the advances in things like Google Now and Siri. And so this sort of access is happening right now. So it's a constant question we get around, how do we try to empower these communities? How do we try and get to a stage where, teachers are becoming much more of a facilitator in a classroom rather than necessarily the knower of all information, because it can be found so easily. So what we also try to do with teachers is help them to kind of upskill in a sense and get more training. So we've got something called Computer Science for High School, which is a great program. We've got Google Teacher Academies. We've got App Certified Trainer programs, which again are training programs which explain exactly how to use these tools. We also support a lot of non-for-profits and universities with various research awards and faculty awards as well. So when you think about it, we all learn to solve problems in very, very different ways. Some people who are much more of a visual learner would prefer to watch a video. Other people would prefer to read a book or read a particular passage, and then that goes in a lot better. Some people, like myself, I still like to, regardless of all the technology, I still like to write down things sometimes just with a paper and pencil, just to because it really goes into my brain in that way. But a really stark example of this, in particular when it comes to video, which has really transformed education, is the Khan Academy. If you haven't heard of the Khan Academy, I definitely suggest having a look at it. But to date, they have that Khan Academy has actually taught 290 million lessons online using YouTube. So a phenomenal amount of lessons that have been taught on everything from physics to chemistry to English to geography, etc. So definitely worth having a look at that if you haven't a look at it already. Lastly, we try to make learning magical for all students. So we try to we have a big focus obviously on computer programming and computer science. So we have a list of programs, awards and competitions such as the Google Science Fair, which allows students to really access peers and submit projects for awards. Lastly, the general concept of getting access to the sort of information that you wouldn't necessarily be able able to access is becoming much more prevalent these days. So a prime example of that being things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, which you can't actually get access to. We've worked with some of our partners to create something called a Cultural Institute, which allows you to get access to everything from the Nelson Mandela memoirs through to art projects and the Dead Sea Scrolls. So phenomenal resources, a way you can walk around over 200 galleries across the world, see these pictures in inordinate detail up close, and actually using your accounts build out your own galleries, just as a kind of an interesting thing. And then another question again after this is, well, that's great for art projects, but how does that make any sense for other people? Well, what it really comes down to is being able to leverage these tools. So one of the examples I like is a teacher in Greenock in Scotland coming up with a virtual road trip, where they actually went from Greenock through Birmingham and down into London, then got the boat across, if you like, virtually, over to Paris. Using Google Maps, they planned the trip. They wrote a report up, which was a report on what they thought the trip was going to be like, how they were going to go about this, virtually, of course. Then they planned the trip and they stopped off at various different points, and the teacher had various different links bookmarked so they could go straight in to a particular museum, for example. The interesting thing at the end of it was that the students didn't necessarily realize that they were learning. It was a real example of education by stealth, but an example of how an English teacher, obviously improving literacy as well, but really bringing that culture into the classroom. At the end of this, we want to reiterate the fact that technology is just a tool. We know it's actually having a serious effect, but it is just a tool. Technology is one of the cogs in the wheel. Content and pedagogy are obviously vital, so we want to make sure that is recognized. With regards to resources, I will share this with Shirley afterwards, but there's a list of web resources, events, programs, etc., that you can get access to as well, of course. There's a huge amount that's possible using Google Apps for Education, but this is definitely not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is a case where you take the pieces that make sense to you, and the bits that you think you can use pretty quickly in a classroom or education situation, and use those. And then over a period of time, there's a supporting community that can help you then expand those into various other use cases and examples. So with that, I'd like to come back and answer if there was any questions. I'll check on the Google Plus page, but Shirley, if there was any questions at all that came through for that. Oh, Shirley, I think you're actually on mute at the moment. Sorry, I think I may have muted you. So if you sorry, my fault. If you look up at the top right-hand corner, there's a little microphone icon up there. So one of the questions that we just got apparently from one of my colleagues who was watching was, is this being recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. It's one of the features that we have with Hangouts called Hangouts on Air. So basically, I will post a link to this, and you'll be able to access that link. So it'll be a video that'll be up on my profile, but you can take that link and share that. Okay, one of the other questions we got is, did you say 50 or 15 people? I said 50, up to 50, and people can collaborate and edit documents simultaneously. So that was 50. Shirley, was there any other? me see if there was any other questions in there. Give me 1 second. Okay, we've got some more comments in here. Okay, so we're a non-profit apps account. Okay, so we're a non-profit apps account. Okay, so profit apps account. Surely you may want to pause that other or close that other close the YouTube one. Or close that other close the YouTube one. Or close that other close the YouTube one. Or close that other close the YouTube or close that other close the YouTube or close that other So maybe Shirley, if you pause the YouTube live stream. So maybe Shirley, if you pause the YouTube live stream. So maybe Shirley, if you pause the YouTube live stream. So maybe Shirley, if you pause the YouTube live stream. Okay, that's better. Oh, Shirley left, so she'll be back in a second. So we have another question here, which was, we have a non-for-profit apps account. Board members across the US would like to hang out. However, most of them do not have Google Plus accounts. I would like to use. Yes, I mean, in a sense, I'm actually using Google Plus here on my personal account. So it's just a Gmail account. So you can use that with pretty much any apps account, as long as the administrator on the account in the US, for example, has allowed you to do that. So yeah, that should be no problem. And that was Aaron who asked that one. So some of the other questions we just got there were, when do we get good guides to Google Plus? It seems powerful but also complicated. Where should we start? Okay, so one of the places I would start would be, funnily enough, on YouTube. So having a look on YouTube for various different Google certified teachers that have shared some really good learnings on how to use Hangouts and Google Apps and Google Plus in particular. If you also have a look at, I'll share this with you. This is the Education on Air page. So if you just do a search for Education on Air, you'll get through to here. And what you can do then is, we've got, I think it's over 200 sessions. Some of them have that are recorded already, that have happened, and you can see those down here. And there are a list of them that are happening over the next while. So they're everything from using Google Maps in the classroom, as you can see here, to various other things. So I think that's probably a good example of using it. But if in doubt, I've used YouTube in particular for a lot of times to work out how to use a particular thing. So when I was trying to work out how to tie a bow tie, for example, I used YouTube to teach me how to do that. So if in doubt, try and find it on YouTube, and then after that, there's definitely some of those resources on Education on Air that are specific to the education community. Let me see if Shirley is coming back in. Just invited her again. So let me see if there are any other questions there that we have. Okay, one of the other questions was how many people can connect using Hangouts. So that's up to 15 people can actually be in the Hangout, like you saw myself and Shirley. So down the bottom here, you'll see you can have up to 15 people, but using the Hangouts on Air feature that we've used here, you can have an unlimited amount of people using these Hangouts, or watching the Hangout, as I should say, watching the Hangout. So we've had everybody from Barack Obama to the Dalai Lama using these to basically put out messages or communicate with people. So any recommendations on Google Certified Teachers? There are a lot of great Google Certified Teachers. There's also some fantastic, great teachers who are Google Certified Trainers. So they're certified by us. So there's the Google Certified Teacher program is a fantastic program, but it's limited to the number of people in each region that can actually join it. Whereas the Google Certified Trainer program is opened up to as many people as want to actually go through the exams and become certified. So if you're looking, you can have a look on the education site. There's actually a list of Google Certified Trainers on there, and certified training organizations as well. But if you want to either tweet me or send me a message on Google Plus for that particular question, Alistair, I'll come back with some more detail if you'd like, and some links. So another question here was, can students access both Gmail and university email accounts? So yes, they're two completely different things. Gmail is a consumer account, and they wouldn't need to change that or move it or do anything with that Gmail account. That remains the exact same. The university email account will be at the university's domain, for example. So if it's at sheffield.ac.uk, so they're two very different. They're two completely different things, I should say. So yes, they can have both. They can also, I should say, they can forward emails from one account to the other if they want, if they only want to just access one account. So we also have a Hangout once a week, or a webinar, I think it actually is, once a week on a Tuesday, which I'll post details of in the live stream on this for this Hangout. But again, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on Google Plus or on Twitter as well. Of course, if you just search my name, you'll find it. Got one more question here. Okay, so when you go live to the public, how many people can be connected at the same time? Okay. Oh, this is with regards to Hangouts on Air, which we're using now. There can be 15 people in the Hangout, but there's no limit on the number of people that can actually watch it. So there's no limit with respect to that. So I think there's no limit with regards to how many people can watch it afterwards. In effect, what the technology does is it broadcasts the Hangout to YouTube. So if you think about the infrastructure behind that, it's vast and enormous. And we currently have, I think, 60 hours of YouTube videos that are uploaded every minute. So I mean, there's no limit whatsoever with regards to how many people can actually watch one of these Hangouts on Air or live Hangouts. Great. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Apologies that Shirley to jump out in the end there. But if there's any other questions or follow-ups, please feel free to contact, as I said, me on either Twitter or Google Plus here. And obviously any other follow-ups, Shirley can probably get back to you as well. Thank you very much for taking the time, and hopefully it was useful. Thank you.